Okay. The gentleman's in the back, Layla. The double doors are open. Okay. Words during question and answer. Layla Saavedra is up in the front, which some of you have dealt with the last couple of years. I have Amber in the white sweater and Priscilla standing with the red. So we're going to do a workshop. It's pretty much informal. I'm going to go through everything. I'll ask some general questions to the group, and if you feel more comfortable talking one-on-one, then you can approach me or Layla or the table back there on any questions you may have specifically. So the purpose of today's workshop is primarily for those residents. This is not going to be a city project. This is for the residents who experience some level of flooding. We're not going to talk about citywide drainage improvements. We're not going to talk about stormwater ponds or pumps. We're going to talk about what we could potentially do to help you guys individually as homeowners. We lost one already. So with that said, we're going to go over the grants. I'll try not to use acronyms because we're familiar with the grant world, but you guys are not. So we're trying to make sure we clearly explain anything. If you don't understand, please raise your hand. We'll go over it several times. Some of these grants have different twists to them and different thresholds and caps. So by a show of hands, I'm just kind of curious of those here, who has flooded more than once in the audience? Who has flooded only once?
Almost twice.
Almost twice, okay.
The first time it didn't come in the house.
And who was lucky enough, I say lucky enough, it surrounded your home, but it didn't flood your house? Okay. All right, we got a good mixture. All right. Well, thank you. We got good. I'm glad we got a good sampling of everybody. So we're going to talk about the different types of grants available right now from FEMA. Every time there's a hurricane or declared event, the state of Florida gets money back from the federal government to make things better so it doesn't happen again. I can see some in the audience who've gone through this with Ian just 2 years ago. And so we're allowing those people who maybe want to change their mind how they want to be mitigated. We'll talk about that in a second. So you could have flooded during Tropical Storm Faye in 2008. And then maybe you got lucky for Irma in 2017. And maybe everybody was impacted pretty heavily with Ian 2 years ago in Milton. I've been in this area since 1987. I've seen the 3 hurricanes of '04, and then Tropical Storm Gordon was November of 1994, 30 years ago, and that had significant flooding. So we're going to go over all the different types of projects here. The first one for residential mitigation is just purely elevation. We simply take your existing home, if it's structurally sound, and we lift it, and we elevate it. This is quite popular on the coast, New Smyrna Beach, Ormond Beach, Port Orange, Deltona Beach is now reconsidering, instead of trying to build bigger ponds, bigger pipes, bigger channels. It doesn't seem to work when you're dealing with Mother Nature's high tides, storm surge. We lose that battle. So people are now just trying to get more used to trying to elevate their home. So if you do evacuate and you come back, at least your home and your contents are fine. But elevation is very supported by FEMA because we're taking the structure at risk and elevating it high enough that it doesn't enter your home again. So that is elevation project. This is an example of one we did in New Smyrna Beach, the before and after to your left and to your right. Some of them won't be nearly this tall. As you go further inland, it may only be a couple feet off the ground, which is enough to save your home for a big storm. As you go towards the coast, east and west coast, the elevations get higher as far as accounting for sea level rise, storm surge, and making sure you're properly protected. So this is called home elevation or elevation projects. The next one is acquisition and demolition. That's for those people who have flooded so many times, they basically have had enough, and they'd rather go and get their home purchased, their land purchased, and move to higher ground. This is probably the most supportive of the three types of mitigation because we're permanently removing the impacts from the area where you have flooded. This is in DeBerry, not too far from here, in Glen Abbey Golf Course. The one for the photograph to the left, that was taken after Tropical Storm Faye in August 2008. And we purchased, or the grant purchased, I didn't personally, we purchased all the homes but the one who decided to stick it out. And then when Irma came a couple years later, he flooded again. So, but this is acquisition. The only caveat to this is you can't build again on the property. The city usually acquires the property. You can build a park, you can build a pond, but you can't put another house back in its place. So this is the most favored of the three because you're permanently removing the structure that's at risk. And we'll talk about this one in quite a bit regarding the costs and the benefits. The last of the three residential options is where we demolish the house, we rebuild it, and we elevate it. Now, this only becomes an option if you elevate your home and you find out from a structural engineer that your home is structurally not sound enough to be elevated. It could be in bad condition, and so if your structural engineer comes out there and says, I can't advise of you lifting the house, and then we actually, FEMA then will allow demolition and reconstruction. I'll warn you now, and we'll get to it in a few minutes, it's the most expensive of the three options for the homeowner. Because FEMA has a cap how much they're willing to spend on this type of mitigation. So we're going to get some example numbers in a few minutes. So elevation, acquisition, demolition, and the last one is demolition, reconstruction. Now we actually have a homeowner in Deltona who said, can I get my home elevated and moved somewhere else? He's got high land and land. He's flooded repeatedly in Deltona, and Layla's confirmed that FEMA will pay for literally relocating your house on other property if the property is owned by you. FEMA's not going to buy your new land, but the cost of relocating your house is an option. So how high are we elevating your house? You're going to hear the word base flood elevation. You'll see that in a lot of maps. It basically means what is the 100-year elevation of the water body, the canal, the wetland that your house is up against. So if that's not known, that elevation, the city has models they've done already citywide that can get that elevation established, or a model can be determined. But if FEMA's maps are accurate, they've already done this part of it, which is they've told most cities in the state of Florida what is the 100-year elevation for some of the most of the water bodies. Then we elevate your house a minimum of 1 foot above that. Again, if you're in the coast, we go a couple feet above that even for sea level rise and storm surge, king tides. But inland, like Deltona, it would be whatever the 100-year elevation is on your lake and a minimum of a foot above that. Some jurisdictions is 1.5 feet and some others are 2 feet.
What happens with a pool in the back?
The pool stays at grade. So if you have an in-ground pool, they'll lift it, and I've seen enough of these. I wonder how they do it, but they actually put a bunch of steel beams underneath the home, and they literally lift it perfectly level. I've seen plates on shelves that weren't moved, And once it's done, they put the piles that you see on the first photograph. But the pool, unless it's right up against the house, it's right up against, if they have about 5 or 6 feet, they can do it. You may want to rethink the pool if you're choosing elevation.
Well,
We'll get, yep. So there are 2 different types of grants that are available. There's the grants that are available after a hurricane hits the community, and there's a grant that comes available every year. So the one we're going to focus on heavily tonight is what they call HMGP, or Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. These are dollars that are given to the state of Florida, and that trickles down to the counties who have been impacted, like Volusia County, and that money then is distributed to all the different cities in the county that have viable projects. We're going to get into those details in a few minutes. So this occurs only after a major disaster, and that money stays within Florida. We're competing and keeping the money locally. The other option is called flood mitigation assistance. This is a grant application that comes up once a year. The bad part of that, you're competing nationwide against other people in the United States. So, for example, we may have a hard, difficult time, the people in North Carolina and Tennessee that flooded so bad with Helene, but that's why I always encourage, and there's a good reason to do FMA, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and I'll have Layla describe why that one's a good option for those who've had repetitive flooding that's been documented. But otherwise, if you're sticking with the elevations we talked about, projects is HMGP. We're not competing against anybody then outside our own backyard, Orange City, DeBerry, all the 16 cities that are within Volusia County. And usually there's plenty of money to be given, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. We hardly ever use all the money that's given to each county. So you're going to hear a word tonight several times. I can't promise everybody in this room that you're going to get a grant, because your house may be really big. To elevate it costs a lot of money, and it means it's not what they call cost effective. In FEMA's eyes, the benefits of buying your house or the benefits of lifting it do not outweigh, are less than the cost they actually do it. I mean, it's not cost effective to them. We typically, Layla, myself, and Amber, and the rest of us, we will screen these in advance. So after tonight's meeting, we'll ask those who are interested. I'm not asking for a commitment tonight. You're not signing your name in a dotted line and promising something. But once you've thought about it for a week or two and you decide you want to move forward, we try to screen everybody and see which candidates are good and strong and which ones are weak. What do I mean by that? Maybe you only flooded once and once only, and the water only went an inch into your house, and it was like for Ian, which was a tremendous event. But if you flooded multiple times in 2004 and 2008 and 2017, I hate to say you're a good candidate for a grant. I'm sorry that you've gone through all that suffering and pain that makes you more desirable for FEMA to move forward with the grant funding. So if you hear us say BCA, that basically means it's a benefit cost analysis. We have to demonstrate to FEMA that your project, your home, is cost effective so they can fund it. Layla, you want to help me on this one a little bit, since you're comfortable with the repetitive loss and how it's got to be documented? And
Hello, everyone. I'm Layla Saavedra. Hello. Okay, so here we're going to talk about, again, there's still the 2 programs. Competitive nationwide, we already said HMGP is not. So the county will receive an allocation of funding, and it'll be distributed among all the cities in the county, and that's how the project will get funded. For FMA, you are competing nationwide, unfortunately. So for FMA, I would be asking for you to be a repetitive loss property or a severe repetitive loss. That means if you have not experienced flooding before, you will not be an attractive candidate, because we are competing nationwide. So you will have the ones that will get the funding before you. Okay, so that's the FMA. Flood insurance, We do not need you to have flood insurance backed up by FEMA. It's called the National Flood Insurance Program for HMGP. However, for the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program, you will need to have flood insurance, not only at the time of the application, but also throughout the life of the project. One important thing is for HMGP, although you're not required to have flood insurance at the time of application, once we elevate your house or demolish and rebuild it, you will need to have flood insurance by FEMA for the rest of the life of the structure, which means forever, pretty much, okay? So that's the way that you will pay back, in quotes, to FEMA for paying 75% of the project cost, okay? So you will have to have NFIP-backed flood insurance.
This is going to be done.
Yeah. So the cost share requirements. We'll talk about HMGP. Typically, 75% will get paid by FEMA. Typically, you will be paying the 25%. And for FMA, you will have 3 different criteria, pretty much. If you are a severe repetitive loss, meaning there's a very strict criteria and you need to have flooded several times for a certain amount of dollars. In other words, you are very likely to flood again, okay? You flooded 3-4 times for an unbelievable amount of money on claims, then you're going to be considered a severe repetitive loss. And if you are a severe repetitive loss, FEMA will pay 100% the cost of the project to elevate you or demolish, rebuild, or acquire your property. So there's no local match. You are just such a liability to them. They don't want to keep paying flood claims anymore to you, so they're willing to pay 100% of the cost of the project, okay? That's severe repetitive loss, the SRL, what we call the SRL. And then the second tier is repetitive loss property. When you have flooded, you have gone through pain and suffering, but not as much to be able to qualify for severe repetitive loss. And if that's your case and you are repetitive loss property, FEMA will pay up to 90% of the project cost, okay? So not 100, they'll cover 90%. And if you are none of the above, then they'll cover 75%, which is at that point the same as if it was HMGP, okay? 75% of the project cost.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're going to ask sooner or later, how long does this take? Yes, ma'am.
I did have a question regarding the criteria. She mentioned that you have to have flood insurance for the property after mitigation was done. But for someone who decides to opt for this one, if something happens, death in the family, you have to relocate, if you purchase the home that's been doing this, are the new homeowners having to do that, or is the person who's responsible initially having to continue to pay on regardless of whether they...
That's a very good question. We'll have to do a deed restriction, okay? And whomever the new homeowner is will have to know that there is a requirement they'll have to meet. You will no longer be responsible for the home because you already sold it, right? The new homeowner will take the responsibility, okay? Mm-hmm.
His house has flooded multiple times, even before he lived there. So would he be a candidate for the right time, the right side, because his property was flooded multiple times, even though he didn't own it at the time?
Yes. The category of severe repetitive loss or repetitive loss goes with the structure, not with the owner. Okay, so FEMA has a list. The city has that list as well.
The city ended up buying the house and returning it around.
Okay, the city bought their,
Deltona, right?
they bought your house.
House,
Yes.
and the house I have now, they sold it to a contractor. Contractor renovated the house.
Right.
There was another person moved in before I bought it from him. And I didn't know any of this
behind me, which was a green belt originally 30 years when I moved there. The whole area was dry. Across the street was a dump. So I know the whole story of the houses on Beachdale that got torn down, and one of them even got moved. So I've been next door to him for 30 years.
But yeah, that's how it would work out. You know, the history goes with the structure, okay, not with the homeowner. So yes, ma'am.
My question is, I don't even know if we need to even be here because our house did not flood, but we have a boat around our house. And last time when it flooded, we had to take a boat to our cars for 5 months to be able to go to work, to get groceries, to whatever. But our house was not touched. Our house was way away from the water, but our driveway flooded. I mean, like 3, 4
Did the
feet
garage
wide.
flood?
I'm sorry?
The garage.
No, our garage didn't flood. It got up close, but the garage did
It
not.
didn't.
Not to our house, because we have a modular home, so
Okay.
it's already up anyway.
Right.
But the garage is lower, but it came up to the garage, but didn't go into the garage.
Okay. And are you interested in flood mitigating your property?
I don't, it's only our driveway, because I think the rest is wetlands that was around us anyway.
Okay.
So, of course, when we bought it 8 years ago, there was no water anywhere, but now we have water everywhere.
Yeah.
But again, we knew when we bought it that part of it was wetlands. You know, just not the driveway.
Right.
You know, to get in and out.
Yeah.
You know, so, but we built the driveway up now, so I don't think that we probably even need to be here, I don't think.
If your home, when you step into your house, the inside of the house, that's called the finished floor elevation, okay? If that elevation is sitting above the 100-year elevation that David mentioned, we will have a hard time proving cost effectiveness.
Yeah, I think we had them build it up. Just 1 foot above.
Because in
Yeah,
the eyes of FEMA, you guys are already protected.
Right.
You're high enough.
Just in case.
Sure. You're already high enough
Right.
that it's going to be difficult to prove cost effectiveness. I'm not saying that it would be impossible, but very difficult.
All right, yeah, and that's what we thought. So I just don't want to waste your time and our time if it's not something that we're going to benefit from, you know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yes,
Thank you.
of course.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was late, I'm not sure when I missed, but I was flooded before here, and now again.
Okay.
So we are staying in Sanford.
So is my daughter-in-law, because her room is renovated that lives with us.
And the driveway and everywhere, we had to find ways to get out, like find little shortcuts to get to our home. And this time I put on the other side of the dry spot that I could find, and we put boots because the driveway was flooding too. So we had to cut, we left boots in the, whenever we come in and we find a place, and then we use a ladder to get to the house. We had to put some tires because we had to walk through water to get to the house. So this is the second time. So I don't know what I missed.
So when we get done, if you want to come up to Layla and I will give the details of what you missed in the beginning and go over your options. So, yes, ma'am.
So, I've been flooded twice, not in my property. My tool shed was flooded almost to the roof. And like I had, water was within 15 feet of my home, within my front yard and my backyard.
You couldn't use the sidewalks.
And I couldn't, because the drain, one of the drains was clogged. So they decided to use the one that's between his property and my property, and they flooded, and they basically killed about 6 of my chickens and flooded my husband's tool shed. So does that still qualify?
No. So FEMA is interested in helping your living area, your house, where you can claim content, where you can claim structural losses. So a tool shed would not, it's an accessory structure. So yeah, they're not going to be able to help you with that. It has to be your house, your living room, your dining room, even your garage. If you have an attached garage and it's flooding, that's why I was asking here if the garage was flooded, that is considered structural flooding. That is very bad. Even if it's the garage, we can claim it for cost effectiveness, but it has to be the actual structure where you live.
So they ate up my whole fence, it's more than 30 times, like I gotta replace it.
Did the water get close to the actual exterior walls of the house?
It was within less than 12 feet of the house.
Okay,
It messed up my whole yard, it's almost half an acre of land.
I see. So we would have to see how high the property, your actual structure, your home is sitting. And if it's sitting low, then we have a chance of proving that, you are a good candidate for the money, but we need to see how high the house is. So we would be looking at the LiDAR information, which is tools that we have to see how high the house is. If you don't have an elevation certificate that you can provide to us that proves the finished floor elevation of the home. Yeah.
And if she's not eligible for like a FEMA grant, is she able to apply through for like homeowners insurance to get a claim for those accessory structures that could have been impacted? Which would be separate from this?
Yeah, that would be a question for the insurance agent. I don't want to,
Yeah.
mislead anybody. That has to be double checked.
If it has to do with the flood, my homeowners told you they wouldn't cover that.
It wouldn't cover.
So you have to flood insurance.
Right.
Yeah, if it's because of the flood,
Right.
water coming from the bottom up,
Yeah.
that's flood insurance. Homeowners will not cover that.
Unless the water came from the roof, that's the only way water.
But just the flooding, leading in.
Well, let me try to finish for everybody, then we can definitely break in smaller groups, because I want everybody to have their time to ask a lot of questions, that's why we're here, but I'll finish up real quick, and then we'll have all nights, we'll repeat if we have to get through it, so you're going to ask sooner or later, how long is this going to take? And I will tell you, right off the bat, we have somebody in the audience that started with us in Ian, and here we are 2 years later, and it hasn't been already yet because of the time it takes the state and FEMA to review the process. So there is a logical step the state has to go through to get funds. After a storm hits the state of Florida, all the cities and all the counties in the state of Florida have to tell the FEMA how much cost they incurred to get their city back up and running. All the damages, the washed out roads, the treatment plants, all the things they had to get to put back in place up and running. They're not getting paid to make it better, they're just getting paid from FEMA to get things back, to get back in place and get up and running. So that whole process is called public assistance. All the cities and counties in Florida tell the state how much cost they incurred from the hurricane. FEMA then takes about 20% of that total number, and it fluctuates a little bit every storm, and they give it back to the states. And those dollars, I think it was $2 billion for Ian that the state got from the federal government, is redistributed to the counties that got hit the hardest. And so, for example, Lee County and Charlotte County for Ian got almost $1 billion. For Volusia County, I think we got $64 million to distribute based on the hardship that each county suffered. Once all those dollars are tallied up and we know what each county is getting, again, I'm going to use the word NOFA, but it's NOFA means Notice of Available Funding. It's when the state officially tells and FEMA tells every county, this is how much money you're getting back. At that point, the clock starts kind of going. We then start meeting as a group, Deltona, DeBerry, Orange City, the people on the East Coast, to land. We all start getting together, and we go to the local mitigation strategy meeting, LMS, and we start presenting our projects to the group so we can start ranking them and start getting our name in the hat for consideration. So FEMA comes out the list, tells every county how much money they're getting. We start meeting as municipalities with the county, presenting our different projects. And they could range from sanitary sewer pump upgrades because the sanitary sewer went out of commission. They couldn't pump the sewage and back into people's homes. That's a form of mitigation. We're talking about residential mitigation tonight. There's drainage projects. So there's a bunch of projects that are presented. And then we rank them. And then we move forward with the actual application. We fill out the paperwork, the modeling, the figures, the graphs. That all goes to the state for review. Once that goes back and forth and on the comments back and forth, and then if the state recommends approval, it goes to FEMA for their blessing, and eventually the city or the county gets an agreement, say we're going to give you X amount of dollars, you need to spend it within X amount of time. That whole process, usually from the very beginning till we get agreement in hand to start construction, can take 2 to 3 years. So I always try to tell everybody, it's not going to happen overnight, and I know it's painful to hear. I want to be honest with you and not mislead you to say next year you're going to have it fixed, because that wouldn't serve you all well, and it doesn't, we have to be honest. Now, some projects are given a higher priority because they're like acquisition, buying your house and converting it to vacant land again, kind of gets to the top of the food chain because they want to get that done as quickly as possible to get those structures out of risk. And then there's other projects kind of fall in line with that. But it's about a 2 to 3 year process. And with all the major storms we've got, from 2 years ago with Ian, Irma, it was 7 years ago. We're still doing some of the grant projects that are under construction, but it just takes a while. So I just want to be honest with everybody that I don't want anybody to think that next year you're going to be sitting in a house that's 3 feet taller and not flood. So let's talk about the money part of it. Traditionally, a grant will pay 75%, traditionally, when I'm talking to you, ladies and gentlemen, on your residential structure. But there's different conditions for different cities and counties. For those who want to elevate, or for those who qualify for demolition reconstruction, the 25% match is covered by the homeowner. If you say, I want to get out, I want to sell my house, and I want to go somewhere higher and drier, in Deltona, this is Deltona's decision, if they do acquisition demolition, they'll pay the 25% match, not the homeowner. And I think that's fairly good, because what that does for the city is it permanently removes that structure from ever being flooded again. And if it gets sold to somebody else and it wasn't told properly, we don't want to have this be a chronic repeating situation. Some cities, very few, have paid a portion of the 25% match, but Deltona has made the commitment that if you choose acquisition, they're going to pay the entire 25% of the match, which I think is a good consideration, because it's got to be attractive to you as the homeowner that I can get out without losing a lot of money, but I can get out permanently and go somewhere on higher and drier land. Now, we're going to get to in a second, the demolition reconstruction, like I said earlier, gets to be expensive for the homeowner. If your house is big and you want to get it reconstructed, that 25% gets awfully big on your end if that's the option you can go. But if you stick with elevation, and if it's cost effective, it's always going to be a 25-75% breakdown for elevation projects. So again, for Deltona only, acquisition, you don't pay the 25% match. For elevation, if you're cost effective, FEMA covers 75%, the homeowner pays 25%, and we're going to do an example on demolition reconstruction to show you how quickly that gets to be a burden for the homeowner. All right, let's pick an elevation project. I can't move, I got to stay in the microphone. So let's say your house, the cost to elevate your home is $300,000. It's not the value of your home, it's the cost to elevate your home. Rule of thumb, and it keeps going up every year because construction goes up. Rule of thumb, roughly $175 per square foot to elevate your home. So say your house is being elevated at a cost of $300,000. If FEMA says you're cost effective, they'll pay $225,000, and the homeowner in this particular example would pay the $75,000 match. I'll leave this up for a second if you're writing it down. And this PowerPoint will be available, I'm sure, through the city's website, or if you sign in with your email address, we'll give you a copy. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. For something like this, a lot of people don't have the ability
skip town, and so there's going to be those things worked out contractually. You can get a loan from the bank to make sure the city knows you're in good faith going to pay this 25% in advance and the work be done. In this particular case, the city takes the lead on the applications. We help the city fill them out. We answer all the questions. The city acts as your sponsor to get the grants awarded to your home. They also have to act as the conduit to hire a contractor to elevate your home or demo, reconstruct it, or demolish it, because we're not asking each homeowner to deal with a contractor individually. That's a lot of burden, and it's better for the city to play that role. And so that's primarily the way that we do it. So the city then has to have the insurance that before they start doing the work, the match is available there. All right, so that's elevation example. So let me give you the example on the demolition reconstruction. Let's start off with example number one. If your home is going to cost you $293,000, and I'll tell you why we picked this strange number, $333 to demo rebuild it, FEMA will pay up to 75%, which is $220,000, and then the delta would be the homeowner. But on demolition reconstruction, that is FEMA's cap, is $220,000. Just a couple years ago, it was as low as $150,000. So they did raise it to $220,000. Now, example two is if it's going to cost $350,000 to demo, reconstruct your house, FEMA is now capped at $220,000, and you can see how quickly your number gets by going with an expensive demolition reconstruction. Now, some people don't have a choice. Your home is so bad structurally that you got to go this route, and that's why you may want to rethink, do I just go acquisition and make it well and not experience potentially a very big financial burden to go with demolition reconstruction. I try not to downplay it too much. It is an option, but I also do know that people don't have $130,000 sit in the bank to do the match a lot of times. So I always encourage acquisition or elevation, but if your home can't be elevated and you don't want to move, the demolition reconstruction is your other option. So.
Demolition reconstruction will only be an option for you if the structural engineering assessment that has to be done by a structural engineer states that the house cannot be elevated. Yes, ma'am.
You have to, who has to pay for that body amount?
The city will pay it, and then we get reimbursed. So we work it out at the end between you and the city. But 75% typically, because that's a soft cost, and FEMA will cover 75%. So we'll work it out with the city and between you and the city. But the structural engineering assessment is critical. For some cities also, the homeowner will pay up front just to get it done. And then just so you can have assurance, yes, my house cannot be elevated. I have to do the structural engineering assessment to confirm that demolition reconstruction is the way to go. So it's easier if you pay for it. We're going to get you the money back, at least 75%. Or if we work with the city will pay it, but then you're going to have to pay it back at the end. So there's different ways to do it. But if we don't have that structural engineering assessment that says that the house cannot physically be elevated, if we don't have that, we cannot offer you this option, okay? Because FEMA is not in the business of going for this option if the house can be elevated, because it's less money for FEMA to pay. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah. So, considering this flooding, are you guys doing something, trying to do something with the flooding? I know we're doing these options, but what if we do these options and the water comes again? I know, did I miss that?
No, you haven't. This workshop is for residential flood mitigation and the options that homeowners have to protect the structural integrity of their home and the contents. Right? We're not discussing today citywide improvements. That's what you're referring to, the infrastructure improvements.
For the storm, let's say that's
Precisely. So what will happen is, say we have a hurricane that comes through, your house is already elevated, your property will be safe, your contents will not get damaged, but you will have water under the home. So in that area of the house will be designed to flood. The water will come in and then it'll recede. But your content in your actual structure will be saved because it'll be higher. So, but yes, the road will be flooded, the yard will be flooded. If you have a pool, it'll be flooded. This is not to protect that. This is to protect just this. Precisely. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I want to piggyback. I think I understand where she's going. So we do an elevation of our homes, and we understand that the property's going to flood, but say that the water level rises even after we've had that done. In the future, if our home becomes at risk of flooding after there's the mitigations done, do we talk to y'all regarding about that when we have the house already elevated and it happens to flood? What happens then?
Yeah. So the fact that we're going to go through this effort, and this is a tremendous effort on your part, the city's part, our part, we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen. And how do we do that? I'm never going to tell you, let's elevate just 1 foot above the BFE. That you'll never hear from me. Like the picture that you saw, that house is elevated 8 feet. So I'm going to ask you, FEMA does not limit how high we can go with the elevation, okay? However, they do look at the minimum. So the city's local code says 1 foot above the 100-year, but if you tell me that you want to elevate 5 feet above it, I'll tell you to do it, okay? Now, there is a rule of thumb. We need at least 9 feet clearance under the home for you to be able to park underneath, okay? So if you tell me that you want to elevate 5 feet, you will lose the garage because now the garage is elevated, right? So now it became part of your living area. So you can turn that into a different room, a bonus room, or whatever you want to make it, and then you just have to run AC to it, right? But that's on you. You'll do that later. But then you don't have a garage anymore. You won't be able to park. You don't have it. It's elevated. So I have to tell you, at least 9 feet is what we need on clearance underneath for you to be able to park your vehicles. A sedan, an SUV, 9 feet is what I need. Okay?
But on that note, every time we go higher, it costs more money. So we will try to go as high as we can and still make it cost effective. Otherwise, if you go too high and it gets too costly, we may have to tell you to ratchet it down a little bit so you can get your grant. So after tonight, you go home and you have time to process all this, and we'll have our contact information, and I don't think Phyllis and Glenn will have any heartburn. You go calling us to answer questions. Here's what you'll be expecting if you decide to move forward by working with Layla, Amber, and Priscilla. There's a flood questionnaire. It's our best tool to know how often you flooded, the depth of flooding. Hopefully you have some good pictures. FEMA is inspired by good documentation for photographs. So this is our step one to coordinate with the homeowners who sleep on this for a couple of nights and decide they want to move forward to the next step. And we have a standard questionnaire we've been using. I think we have some extra copies for those who just want to take it home and kind of look at it and digest it. If you're lucky enough to have an elevation certificate, and what that is basically a 2 or 3 page form that the surveyor tells you the elevation inside your home. It's extremely helpful for us because we know exactly your elevation in your home instead of looking at a map and making a best guess. So if you happen to have it, it could be 20. Pardon?
Does the elevation certificate expire?
No. Unless you did something to your house, it could be 10 or 20 years old. If your house is in the same condition it was 20 years ago, it's still good for us to use for information.
I just asked because I did one, but somebody reached out to me recently to say that it expired and I need to do another one, so I just...
Okay. Talk to us afterwards and we'll find out the reason why. So, also, if you want to go to the next step, FEMA does have some standard forms you got to fill out. It's voluntary. We're not making you do this. We're not forcing you to do this. You're doing this because you want to mitigate your home. So there's a voluntary participation form, and later as we get deeper involved, your legal status in the country and some issues regarding what is the privacy release content, Layla, involved, or what's the content of that?
You're going to be giving your information to FEMA. So you're going to be giving them the authorization, your authorization to use your data for the grant agreement and for documentation. It's just documents, you're giving them authority to get into the history of your home and all that. So it's just a form that is required. Regarding the legal status, if you were not born in the U.S., say you are from Canada, but your kids are Americans, that counts. So you will qualify because of your kids being Americans, okay? That's the legal status. And the voluntary participation, like David said, we're never going to force you or convince you to sign up. This is 100% voluntary. Say you are interested in the acquisition, demolition, and you want to sell the house. You have the right to change your mind. You let us know. Of course, we would prefer that you don't. That way we can buy the house and demolish it, and nobody ever has to suffer what you went through with the flooding. But say you change your mind, that's okay. FEMA will be okay with that. We just have to ask you to prepare or sign the withdrawal form, and we're done.
What's the deadline?
We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Yeah, thanks.
We already talked about the structural assessment. If you think you want to go elevate your home, and we got to make sure that it's structurally sound, the structural assessment. And then further down the road, when the contractor gets hired, there'll be a lot of coordination with the city and the contractor. You'll get to know them on a one-on-one basis. Some people literally go away for several months. They don't want to see the war zone of their house being elevated, and some are hands-on. So it's quite a, you're seeing your yard and everything get torn up so they can physically lift your house and make it higher. So there's different people who want to get involved or not get involved. That's way down the road once the contractor gets selected, and then constant coordination with Layla, Amber, Priscilla, myself, and city staff as we get closer and closer to awarding the contract to a contractor. We do plan on having ongoing public meetings. Good turnout tonight, but 6 months from now, we may shrink to half the people in this room because you decide you're going to, you know what, I don't think we're going to flood again, and that happens. But it happened with Irma, and it took 7 years. But some people are willing to take the risk, and I can't convince you otherwise. Whether you believe the climate is changing, the weather's changing, things are getting, that's your decision personally. But there will be ongoing meetings to help guide everybody through the process. And Priscilla, Amber, and Layla are always on the phones with the homeowners once they're into the program to answer a ton of different questions they have as they get deeper and deeper into it. All right, so after tonight, we're not asking you to fill the form out necessarily, but you can take it home if you want to participate in some form of mitigation, whether, again, it's acquisition. We buy your house, the city pays the 25% match, so you're not paying this year, you're made well to get to higher ground. If you choose elevation, the reason we'll need these forms sooner than later is we got to start telling the city how many projects we're going to submit an application for. Now, we do not do an application usually for each homeowner separately. It's just too much work. This is one we did years ago. This is a typical application. They got twice as big as this, and this was only just a few homes. So some of them get quite large. So we don't want to do this for every homeowner individually. And there's another reason we bundled them together. Some of y'all's houses are a good candidate and they're really strong, and some are going to be weak. So if we bundle them together, we can kind of pull everybody up and make sure the weaker candidates can get funded. And that's how we try to sometimes encourage. If there's 6 people that want to be elevated, if we think we put those 6 together, that the 6 of them combine, make it sell well, we'll encourage that. If there's one really bad one, it's going to pull the other 5 down. We're going to break the news to you. I don't think this is a good time to be doing what maybe you're planning on doing. Maybe you're hell-bent to do elevation, demolition, reconstruction, and so it costs $500,000 and completely destroy the other 4 candidates. We're going to have those discussions, those honest discussions. Once we know the list, we will then present that to the Volusia County Committee like we talked about earlier. That's when the fun begins. All the different cities bring forth their projects. We only have a problem when the number of projects exceed the dollars we're getting from FEMA. Then it can get a little bit spicy, but it's been a really good group all the years I've been involved, almost 20 years in Volusia County. We work very well together. Everybody usually gets their projects funded, and so there's usually not a problem with Volusia County's group. The east and west side get along really well. I'm making sure everybody's taken care of. And inevitably, people will drop out. Even a city project like a lift station or a drainage project, they may not want to wait 2 or 3 years to fix it. They'll decide to pay for it their own, and so their name gets taken off the list, and the people below them get moved up. So there's a lot of dynamics taking place. This list is not cast in stone. Once it gets approved by the committee, it goes to the state, but there's always shifting of projects and people dropping in and out. And then the grant being awarded, which is a good encouraging news, and then we get a contractor on board and we move forward through your decision on what project to move forward with. I think we talked about some of these already. We want to make sure you're a strong candidate. We want to make sure you're cost effective. We want to make sure your house is structurally sound enough if you choose the elevation option. And again, if it gets too costly to do what you're asking for, we have to tell you sooner than later that it's not cost effective. We may want to ratchet down some of the requests. I will tell you, FEMA's not in the business of putting lipstick on a pig. They want to elevate your home, make sure you're flood free, and they move out. So the idea of getting new siding, or I'm going to get these awning windows I always wanted, that's not part of the package. You can do whatever you want once the house is elevated or demo reconstructed. Once FEMA knows your dollars have been spent and it's been built properly, and then you can do everything you want to make it pretty in your home again. But I will I will enforce or reinforce that I don't want to mislead anybody. They're going to pay for all your little punch or wish list you want to do. Their primary purpose is to make sure you never flood again. So
when they do the lifting, they connect everything back up, like all the power.
your water, sewer, gas.
So part of that, it's not like the homeowner is done, hey, your house is lifted.
That's all part of the reconstructed elevation.
And then on the demolition one where it said like the cost of the house to rebuild, who pays for the demolition, or is that part of that?
That's all part of the 100% coverage. Yeah.
100%, okay.
Now, for those who have a physical need, not to go up and down steps that are 9 feet above grade, the grant does cover a lift. So if you have a wheelchair person or special needs, or you're getting to the point in your life that I just can't fly up and down the steps like I used to, as long as we know in advance, we'll make that part of the grant application that a lift will be added. Need a medical note, thank you. So
like an external elevator lift
Yep.
type thing?
Yes. So I'm going to stop on for a second on the grant program. When we did this last year, there were some people who said, gee, the water got awfully close to my house. I don't qualify for a grant like the couple on the left, but what can I do to safeguard my house? So we're going to talk about a few products. If you decide this is too much or it's too much for me to think about or consider, but there are some products in the market that if you want to at least do something to button up your premises as you go through, unfortunately, more hurricane seasons ahead of us. I only put this up, and this will be in the PowerPoint. FEMA does a wonderful job on publications, and these are a couple guides here. If you're handy, I'm lucky if I can change a light bulb, but if you're really handy and you can do things yourself, they give you some great guidelines of what you can do to protect your own house if you're that type of, you're gifted with to be able to do work like that. So these will be in the PowerPoint, and you can get all these are free, downloadable. FEMA must have several hundred publications that are free, ranging from all different topics, from tornadoes, earthquakes, in our case, Florida, it's tornadoes or flooding, but they do a wonderful job with some great booklets and publications. So we're going to talk about shields first, and this is where you simply put a product, an engineered product, in front of your sliding glass door or your front door, or if you have a really big window that's close to the ground, to protect that so the water does not enter your premises. You can only pile up so many sandbags, and depending if you're elderly, moving a lot of sandbags can be really physically taxing, and you may put 2 sandbags on top of each other and the flood water's coming its way up here. So these kind of go the extra step. And there's all different products in the market. These are going over windows. This is going in front of the door. You can actually barely see the base of the door underneath the water line. And these are all different types of flood shields that are available on the market. All shapes and sizes. This looks like it's a French door almost, or an opening sliding glass door. There's ways to protect if you have an opening in your house for whatever reason, maybe it's your pet or your dog that goes in and out. We don't need to have that as a conduit to flood your home. Another one for the front door. So there's a lot of products out there. In a second, I'll have a listing of companies. On your own time, you can research it. But I'm just throwing this out there in case, the mitigation option's not quite your appetite. And then there's these aqua barriers or aqua tubes that got quite popular, where people are putting them around their home. They fill it with water. Again, if you've been out there long enough that you know it's never going to get in your house, but awfully close, these come in 2 foot high, 3 foot high, 4 foot high. The bigger they are, the more costly, but they are very efficient if you're pretty sure that's not going to get above a certain height. You fill it with water, you drain it when you're done. Probably the biggest burden, besides the cost, is where you store this. So whether you believe in losing your garage to a deflated aqua dam, or give it to your aunt and uncle who are not using other space, but that's the one part, is storing these things when they're not in use. And I'll answer your questions ahead of time. FEMA does not pay for this stuff. They don't pay for the shields. They don't pay for the aqua dam. These are things you can do to protect your home if you choose not to do the mitigation option with the grants. And I'll go over more pictures of these aqua dams.
Exactly.
There's a hospital in Tampa that used this for Helene or for Milton, and it saved the hospital. If you guys live here at Fish Memorial Hospital, the water went to the first floor of Fish Memorial Hospital with Milton, and they had to pump it down to get the water out of the x-ray room. Also, if you're going to do certain things, make sure your AC and the outside, if you want to get lifted up. And this is something you can do if you're handy or have an electrician help you elevate it. The water's getting awfully close to your home, and you want to salvage some of your units. Here's some ballpark numbers. These are numbers we got a year ago, and so I caution it may have gone up, but shields were running a year ago between $600 and $1,200 per opening. This could be as much for the sliding glass doors, and this could be more for the front doors, but I will give you all the names of vendors to call if that's of interest to you. And these are the ballpark numbers we were getting for the aqua tubes. I did some quick math on a standard home, took around the entire circumference. I think I ran the math between $7,000 or $8,000 for the aqua tube. Not cheap, but again, if it's the protection you want to have to make sure the water doesn't get in your home, it's something you might want to consider. And this, again, all this will be available. We'll email everybody who gave us their email address, all this information to look at, all the different vendors, all the different websites, and some of the local contractors that provide this information. So with that, I'm going to, on my soapbox a little bit. When you bought your house and somebody says you were not in a floodplain, you're always in a floodplain in the state of Florida, always. I think we've learned our lesson, unfortunately, the hard way by the banks telling us we got on the website, your house is not sitting in this great little area, you don't need flood insurance. Flood insurance, when you're not in the floodplain, is very affordable. When you're in the floodplain, it gets to be very expensive. So I think some of the numbers we heard from Ian and Irma, I think it was as high as 70% of those who flooded were outside the flood zone. So you're not protected just because you're not in the flood zone or because you're out of the flood zone. So I'm always going to encourage, if you can afford it, please give yourself that extra peace of mind for your home to be protected. And with that, I can answer some general questions, and then we can also break into groups and have Layla and others answer more specific questions you have. Yes, ma'am.
And you said for those that, you pointed out that those who chose not to do the mitigation, but at the beginning when you were talking about the extra offers, or not offers, but options for flood protection of the homes, you pointed out for those where the water came up close to. So if the water came up close to the home, you have homeowners that show that as time has progressed, water's gotten closer and closer each flood event, that we've got water that's coming closer and closer to our home, we don't qualify for these mitigation options of either elevation, demolition, or acquisition, and we try to do security around our homes. How can we be able to apply for an assistance if we're trying to prevent future flooding from our homes if you're seeing a progression of a flood?
There's 3 ways to prove cost effectiveness, okay? The first one will be with historical damages. You have flooded 3 times, and you know that you're going to flood again. So you're going to provide us the flood claims, and we'll prove cost effectiveness that way. That's the first option. The second option is if you are close to a lake, a creek, anything that you know is very close to your house, you are at risk of flooding, even though you may not have flooded yet structurally. If that's the case, we have computer models that have been prepared before, and we can justify to FEMA, this house has not flooded before, however, it may flood in the future. With the next hurricane, we don't know. So if you're interested in flood mitigating your house, even though it has not flooded yet, but you do have a lake in your backyard, then we can run. You would be part of the pre-screening services that we're going to be providing, and we would determine if you qualify for the program or not. It has a lot to do with how high your house is sitting. If it's sitting high, then may not. But if you're sitting low and you still haven't flooded because you just got lucky, you haven't flooded yet, but there's been water around your house, it's just a matter of time, unfortunately. So we can take a look. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, 2 years ago, the house was not flooded inside, but it came right up to the house. And it surrounded, we were like on a lake almost, because we have the nature park across the street and a retention pond in back. I do have pictures showing how it came, and the city is very aware of where we are. Okay, this time it came in the house. Both times we were not able to use our septics for 3 weeks maybe? A month last time. Okay, this time we couldn't use it again. Now, the water came in my addition that I put in the house about 12 years ago for my son and daughter-in-law, because I'm a widow and they live with me. They haven't been in their room since the flood, because the water came up in the toilets, came up in the showers, and their whole room is gone, furniture and everything. So I feel that we have cause to do the mitigation, even though we only flooded once.
That's fine. So,
Yeah, it's close a couple times.
okay, many times, although you may have flooded, say 3 times, okay, but your claims are only for $5,000, $10,000. It's not $100,000 or $200,000. I may tell you that you do not qualify for the program under historical damages. However, because you have the river or the lake close to you, I may be able to qualify you from that aspect, having the professional expected damages.
Well, right now, the one room is costing about $33,000.
Yes.
So, and I had screens from my pool missing, which would be under the homeowners, but it doesn't meet the deductible. So they took the whole amount, because we had flooding in the garage too.
Yeah. So remember the elevation. Say, let's just talk elevation. It's expensive. So if I tell you that elevating your house will cost $300,000,
No.
I'm gonna need historical
No, we're not
expenses.
going to elevate.
We're not,
What are you thinking?
you can
Acquisition. Acquisition. Yeah.
We're all the same.
Of course.
We're all acquisition.
Acquisition, okay, yeah. Acquisition is the first option for FEMA. That's what FEMA puts priority on, because they're not in the business of continuing to pay for flood claims, so.
Yeah, we don't want to go through it again, and technically, it breaks my heart to lose that house, because I've been there 30 years, but I just can't go through it, not at my age.
And we can help you, like if you're gonna stay in Florida and you're looking at a different house to buy, we can help you determine if that property is out of the flood zone. Like David was saying, the entire state of Florida can flood, anywhere you are, right? But at least you won't be within a special flood hazard area, which has a higher risk of flooding.
And see, now the issue is, we have 5 adults, but I have 2 masters and 3 bathrooms. So it's going to be hard trying to find a place
Something like
high and
that.
dry.
Yeah.
But we have the pool, and like David said, because it's up to the house, there's nothing you can do with the pool.
We can elevate a house as long as we have 3 feet separation, at least. But if it's closer than that, we're not going to be able to.
So when you say 3 feet, because we have the pavers that come right up to it, are you saying from the actual lip of the pool to the door?
Precisely. Precisely. You need at least 3
No,
feet.
there isn't really that much.
Okay, so it's very close
Plus,
to the exterior wall.
I mean, how far is the nature park from us? It's right across the street.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 feet, 20, 25 feet.
So
That pond drains into that lake drains into the pond behind our house. The 30-inch culvert connecting the 2 ponds
Goes into the retention behind us.
Okay.
runs through my property.
Right.
So when we finish, there's going to be where Priscilla and Amber are standing. There are questionnaires, like David mentioned, the flood questionnaire. We are here to help you, okay? And we care. We do want to help you. We don't want you to have to go through this again. However, we need you desperately, because if we can do the application, we can write the application, but if you don't provide us the information that we need historically, then we cannot come up with a strong application. So we need you badly. You need to remember, does your property flood every time it rains? Or is it just for hurricanes? When does it flood? So the questionnaires are going to be on the table. Take it home, fill it out, return it to Phyllis, and then we'll help you, because then we'll be able to say, okay, well, this house, what do we do? You know, how do we make it work? And that's our job, to help you. So, and we will, but we need you, okay? Photographs, videos, anything that you have that can strengthen your application, it's what we need. At the end of the day, it's for your own benefit, okay? Now, there's 3 options, as you can see over there at that table. There's going to be what we call the novice. The novice have the notice of voluntary interest, and they're different for each category. So if you're thinking, I want out, I'm done. I want the city to acquire my property, and I'm leaving. Please take that NOVI, that notice of voluntary interest, fill it out. If you can tonight, get it over with. Do it right now. There's pens and the forms are there, okay? All it is just your name. It's asking for contact information, a phone number, an email, something that we can use to contact you back, but we know now that that's the category that you're interested in, okay? And likewise for the other 2, elevation and demolition reconstruction. Yes, ma'am.
One more, when you do the demolition, land acquisition demolition, like some of us where we've lived in the home for long times, we've had equity, so we've been able to do remodelings, things like that. We purchased new windows, we did new AC units, we did new cabinets for our kitchen. You're planning on destroying the house, and I hate saying that word, but I mean that's the reality of it. You're going to destroy the house. Are we able as a homeowners to do some form of
Do you want to take some of the ceiling fans and things? Yeah, okay. That's a good question.
I mean, that's
Okay. Okay. The quick answer is yes, okay? And what we are concerned about is the openings of the house. Those must remain closed. Windows, doors, the sliding door in the back, all of that must remain. Because the last thing we need is for the house to be empty, and then something really bad happens in that house. We don't want that, okay? So Precisely, yes. Unwanted individuals that know that the house is empty, and then we don't need that, because then it's the property by then belongs to the city. We can't have that. However, if say you have the main door, you paid so much money for it and you love it. So we have to work it out with the city. But what we have done for other cities is that the day of the demolition, the homeowner swaps. Or 2 days before you swap, you do something. So the city will work. You can you're going to have to work it with the city, okay? However, I can tell you from what we've done in other places, yes, it doesn't make sense for all of that to go to waste.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. I have in the West Coast, I have had entire cabinets removed by the homeowners, ceiling fans. They've taken everything, to the new house. It makes sense. So,
Less money.
yes, of course. Yes, ma'am. Just a sec. Yes.
Quick question. So I've owned my property for 5 years. Let's just say I don't have the history that you want for flood insurance. How do I prove that the property has historical flooding? Because I'm pretty sure it's
Okay. So if you're interested in any of the 3 programs, then you just provide us your contact information to what you're thinking you're going to need, and then we'll work it. We'll do it based on the professional expected damages. If you don't have the history, because you don't know.
Yeah, because the person that owned the home before me built it from scratch, and he passed away, and then I purchased it from the family. So
Okay. Yeah. So in your case, you don't have the history.
I'm the house is on Drysdale and Fort Smith, right across from the lake.
So that she was mentioned because you're right next to a body.
I've got 2 bodies of water, the one that I didn't know I had in my backyard, and the one in front of me.
Yeah. So we can prove cost effectiveness based on the expected historical damages. Just a second. Yes.
How do you determine the value of the home?
An appraisal. An appraisal is done.
Is it what currently is, or prior to the flood?
Okay, so there's 2 ways to do it. But say in your group there's 5 houses, okay, in your application, we have to be consistent. So the city will decide. We've done both. But if the houses have been remodeled already and they're fixed, then it makes sense to do the appraisal based on current market conditions. If they aren't, if they aren't fixed, they're destroyed still, pre-event is what makes sense. However, whatever is decided will carry through for all the houses. Okay? Yes.
So when we moved here, 2001, the lake was dry, 6 months. So we went over in a flood. So a couple of years after, they said we had
why is my lake still going up? Milton was a month ago. Well, take the lakes out of the equation, and all the other area that's got houses and yards and lawns, all that rainfall that fell on that is going underground to these lakes. So that's why some of these lakes will take months and months and months to recede, because they're being fed by all the water that went into the sandy soils. And some lakes are actually going higher a month after we had the storm.
That's what happened with me, and that was like, wow. And then my AC stopped working because it's under the water, and my well stopped working, so that's why we had to leave, and we were just using the boots and climbing over a fence to get out. But I moved my cars up the street so the cars didn't get flooded.
Good. I think there's some questions in the back.
Yes, if you decide to go with acquisition, how much time frame is there, like, to move out? Do you have a certain amount of time?
On the acquisition option. So once the grant is submitted and once it's approved, you're going to get plenty of time in advance to plan your departure, where you're going to move. And so we're not going to, the day we get the agreement, we're not going to kick you out of the house. So that can be worked out, and especially if we have in Deltona multiple people that want to do acquisition and demolition. We'll stage it based on everybody's different needs, where they're going, and what they need for time to get out. We can't wait too long because the grant has deadlines, but we can work with each homeowner to try to stagger it to make sure that you have proper time to make accommodations.
And if we had a large accessory structure, like a metal building, would we be able to take that?
It's up to the city if they're okay with you, because they're buying the property. But the accessory structure is an ice shed or a gazebo. It's up to the city if they say for you to go and take that and not alter the acquisition cost.
What about your pool equipment outside? Like I have a salt system, I have a brand new motor. The hurricane threw the motor, was underwater. I had to get a brand new motor.
The appraisal, it's appraised as if you were trying to put your house on the market. It's an appraisal. Now, the city does the first appraisal usually. If the homeowner thinks it's too low, then they pay to have their own done, and then we sit down and hopefully agree upon a price and move forward. So,
What's that time frame then? Like if you say that you want to do the acquisition for the city to have the appraisal, so that you can make a determination if it's something that you want to do, you still want to do that.
Okay, so it's too early now because we still have not received the notice of funding availability for Hurricane Milton. So we need to get there. We need to see what is the allocation. We need to meet with Volusia County and local mitigation strategists. So it's too early. But if you are interested in that program, then you just let us know, and then we'll work it out. Yes.
Which one?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you're not sure yet, what do you do?
If we're not.
You're not sure which program you
The flood questionnaire has the 3 alternatives. So you can mark, say you are interested in 2, just mark your 2, and then we'll keep you in mind for both, Or if you're interested in 3, you don't know, just mark all 3. Yeah. Yes.
Since the timeline of this is possibly 3 years, some of us either we just can't handle the stress anymore. Some of us not only can't handle the stress, but we've got family members that we're worried about their safety. And we decided we don't want to wait 3 years because who knows how many times it may or may not flood,
Yes.
or when it does.
Right.
We decided to sell the property. When we do that, the future homeowners, are they going to be notified of, that there was a land acquisition interest and they're going to be talked about to this? Or is it just the city comes in and says, we're doing it essentially, I can't remember the word for it, but it's where the government takes it. And I can remember.
We're not going to do that. It's eminent domain. We're not doing eminent domain. This is voluntary, right? So say you sell the property, you inform the new homeowner, well, this house had a history of flooding.
Yeah, you have to.
Yes.
Pass that law.
They just passed the law, that you are correct. so you need to disclose that information, okay? So you let them know, and if you signed up tonight or tomorrow or a month from now, you decide, yes, I'm signing up, please inform the new homeowner that the house is part of a program, or at least is being looked at. And they will have to contact us, because we're not going to know when you're selling the property, okay? So please let them know, pass the information to us, our contact information, so we can let them know. I mean, years ago, I had one of the most difficult conversations with one of the homeowners who I had to break the news that the house had horrific history of flooding, and this was her dream home that she bought by the beach. And it was very, very difficult, but I had to break the news to her, and now I have her in one of our programs. But yeah, now it became law. You must disclose if you have had a history of, yes, very recently.
October 2024, if your home had flooded and you filed a claim, you have to disclose that.
That is precise.
There were several reasons for why that was done that.
Yeah.
But, for those who, because according to FEMA, from me telling them, because, as you say, living space, the floor plan of my house, since water did not get onto the floor plan of my house, FEMA told me that I don't have to disclose that information because legally, technically, blah, 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 blah. But not knowing the timeline, nobody ever told me about that. So I was looking into, I don't know how long this is going to wait. Nobody's giving me really much of any answers of, possibility of timeline. And I've got kids that, my concern is their safety, health, and well-being.
Sure.
This is the second time that the house was at risk of flooding. The first time we moved everything out, FEMA didn't help us out, even though we tried to do preventative measures. Then the house flooded again within a month of the second hurricane in 2022. And then in the summer of 23, it flooded 1 foot in our yard. And we were like, well, this is how we're going to live in it. Now this time it came less than 10 inches from getting onto our floor plan of the house. And we didn't move anything until the water was almost 10 inches from there. And we were like, all right, so now we've got to move. And so this is the second time where I've told my children that we've got to pack up and move out of our house for an unknown amount of time. I just, waiting an unknown, an undetermined amount of time, I was looking into trying to sell it. So talking about this, being that it's going to be 2-3 years, if we sell our house, what would be the situation from there? So that's why I'm asking.
Yes, of course. Yeah. And if you have additional questions, we're here for you. So if you want to take a picture, that's our contact information. We'll be emailing you the PowerPoint so you have it. And thank you so much for coming by.
It's being recorded.
Okay.
It's not being televised live.